thanks for joining me here in Framingham State alum 1982 to 85. You have some fond memories of Framingham, Mass?
I do. In fact, I'm the third member of my family that's gone to Framingham State. My sister Lauren graduated, I believe it was 1978. She became a elementary school teacher in Ashland.
Oh,
So she still lives nearby. Her husband, Dennis, that's where they met at Framingham State. So it's one of those love stories. And he's been on the alumni board, I guess, for quite a while. So Lauren was the first in our family to go. My brother, Mark, graduated probably 1983, might have that off by a year or so. And he still runs and owns his own video production company. And I followed a little bit after. I'm the youngest in my family, so I graduated in 1985.
okay.
I'm originally from Natick. I grew up mostly in Natick, so
Yeah, that's Flutie territory.
Sure. I graduated. Doug was in my class, actually.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting. I'm from Ashland as well. So my dad taught at Ashland. So he must know your sister, I would think.
Everybody seems to know her, so.
Yeah, I'll ask him. Lauren Cavanaugh, yeah?
Lauren Alves, actually.
Alves, okay. Yeah, I will. That's great stuff. So any big memories you have of Framingham State and what it did for you?
I was really pleased with my experience at Framingham State. I actually went. My best friend is Paul Franchos from Natick, and when we went, because we lived in Natick, we weren't able to live on campus, so we had to commute for a couple of years. And I think Paul and I actually got him to change the rules so that we could have an experience of living on campus. So, our final 2 years there, we lived on campus. Ended up in Lindsay Hall. I'm not sure if that's still there with all the construction and all that, but I was a political science major and have a lot of great respect for, I think he's now retired, but it was Professor John Ambacher, who really inspired my career, afterward and things like that. So one little small, it's a fond memory, but it's also a difficult memory is after I graduated, I got an opportunity to work for former Secretary of State John Kerry when he served in the Senate. And one of the, I guess the big pride and joy that I had was I was in his office when the Challenger space shuttle with the mission of Krista McAuliffe had launched, and I was planning on being the liaison between Senator Kerry and Framingham State to celebrate that, and unfortunately, that day was probably my worst day, working in Kerry's office. And, I tried to call the president of the university at the time, I believe it was Paul Weller at that point, and pledged, whatever support we could have for the community. And, we tried to do our best to make the campus heal. And, it was a tough day and a tough thing, but I'm kind of, in a way, there's a tragedy there, but I see that they've developed the McAuliffe Center there, and I've participated in a few programs there, and it's just, a very impressive center that they have. There are some other Challenger memorial educational programs that are sprinkled throughout the country. But it's just nice to see Framingham State really rise to prominence and have something as prestigious. In fact, the program that I participated in recently, they had a MIT professor, talking about life on Mars and everything, and just I was really just stunned. And the director of that center is just an incredible scholar, and so it just Framingham State has a lot going for it, and it seems to have, since I graduated quite a while ago, it seems to really have built up, and they get a really great new energetic president, and they're hiring great people like you to work there. So it's just I've got very positive memories of the it's as its claim is it's the first public teacher training school in the country or whatever. So between that and Krista McAuliffe and some of the other things that we have, it's maybe perhaps a hidden gem, because Massachusetts is surrounded by a great Harvard and MIT and all kinds of, Boston University, and so it kind of gets overshadowed a little bit from all the other higher education institutions there. But it certainly was the great basis for my career and later educational studies.
Yeah, it's a great point because the schools in Boston, of course, the cost is tough for people, and you don't realize what state schools have done for individuals. But especially here, I'm amazed how much this school has grown. And at the time, I'm sure when you were going to school, when I was going to school, you didn't know the future of state schools and colleges. Would they survive? And to me, it's kind of gone the other way, being back on campus here. I've just been amazed at the transition.
Yeah, and I don't know when the transition took place or whatever, but it was Framingham State College when my family graduated, and now they've been elevated to university status or whatever. And I think that's it's not easy to do, and they don't just grant those things lightly. So
no,
it's like you say, it's an affordable option. I think my parents were helpful to give us a little bit of money, but most of us worked going through school, like I'm sure most of the students are there now. And I just think it's really an option for people that might be having a tough time economically. And also, so you don't have to. I didn't have to pay off a lot of student loans and things that came later with my graduate degrees. But people really, should encourage people to take a look at what Framingham has to offer.
I was going to say, you have quite the resume of colleges after Framingham State. A lot of work, which has led you into where you are today.
Yeah, after graduation, I got accepted into which was at a time a brand new program at UMass Boston. It's called the McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies, and really, just like my experience at Framingham State. That was a fantastic opportunity. It's if you've never been to that campus or whatever, it's right on Boston Harbor, right next to the Kennedy Library and the Edward Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate, and I think the Massachusetts Archives is also there. They're also booming. They now have residence halls there or whatever. So just going from Framingham and having that experience, and then getting into a new program there at the McCormick Graduate School, which is named after, for people that are history buffs or whatever, Speaker McCormick was Speaker of the House during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations. So it's named after him. So that was quite an experience for me to go from Framingham to UMass Boston.
Yep. And then you ended up in South Carolina, right? Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah. I at the time after I worked for about a year in Senator Kerry's office. During that time, like now, there were budget issues and things, and something called the Graham-Redmond-Hollings Deficit Reduction Act passed. So there had to be about a half a dozen or so of us, were reduction in force or rift from Kerry's office. And luckily I went on from there to work for, I think he's unfortunately passed away now, but Joe DiNucci was the state auditor. He was a famous boxer and state representative from Newton. So I worked as a budget analyst in the state auditor's office for a couple of years. And while I was finishing up my master's degree, and I decided to, just to see if I could, take it to the next level and pursue a doctoral program. And I really deliberately decided to go outside, the New England area, mainly because I have an interest in presidential politics and presidential elections. And, you have to have a sense of other parts of the country, particularly the South. It's actually called, there's a professor that was at the University of South Carolina when I was there. He wrote a book. These are twin brothers, Merle and Earl Black. They wrote a book called The Vital South. Okay. And if you want to win the presidency, you have to get, as we're all painfully aware right now, you need to get 270 electoral college votes. And, the southern states actually comprise a bulk of that electoral necessity that you need to win the presidency or whatever. So I deliberately went there. Well, I applied, and I actually was kind of stunned a little bit that I got in, and was fearful, like most people are. Well, did I have the wherewithal or capacity to earn a doctorate? And I went there, and it was another name that I can bandy around. Andy Card, who used to be the White House chief of staff for George Bush, is also a University of South Carolina graduate. So there were a few people from Massachusetts that actually went there. And at the time or whatever, they were still flying the Confederate flag. So, when I went there, it was, it was a lot. The weather was nice. It was very hot. But people were always talking about the war, and being from the New England area, we're used to the Revolutionary War and celebrating Patriots Day and Evacuation Day and all kinds of things. The reenactment of the Bunker Hill assault. And, I quickly figured out that, they weren't as in tune with Revolutionary War. They were talking about the Civil War there. And only recently, fairly recently, did they actually take the Confederate flag down. And so it just getting a different sense of political culture to try to understand how others in other states and other parts of the country think or whatever was primarily one of my motivations for going there. And so I went there through a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. Finished out I stayed on there for 4 years at an institute there, and had a pretty decent experience at the University of South Carolina, and so in addition to being a Ram, I'm a Gamecock, and
Yep.
I think UMass Boston's are Beacons. So
Beacons. Okay.
they have all kinds of a whole treasure trove of mascots and
Yeah.
in my league.
Was that the first time that you had been, I know in New England, we don't really go anywhere. Was that the first time you had been like that far outside of New England?
My dad was in the Army Reserve or whatever, so he used to have his summer training. So we travel quite a bit to different Army bases or whatever in Pennsylvania and Virginia and just various other parts of the country. So, I'd been, as a vacationer or whatever,
Yeah.
or on some of my father's business trips or whatever, he would take me along. So I'd been to different places, but that was the first time that I actually physically, up and left, and, was just me there in a totally different place.
Yeah.
So that, and like I said, I mean, it was just the climate was totally different, and I had to. I every once in a while I slip back into it, but you have to really gauge your accent.
Oh, yes.
If you don't want people to make fun of you. So, we could never really say the short form of automobile or what you did with your automobile when you were done with it or whatever, because people would just make fun of you. And that was actually something I guess my dad had learned as well, because being in the military and, having to go all around to, I think he trained in Missouri and got stationed there or whatever. So he also learned to moderate his New England accent, which my wife says comes out during sporting events and
Sure.
and other times. So it's just something that, like you say, you gotta keep an eye on or just be aware of when you're in different places.
It's distinct, no doubt. So I know you own the cross-cultural communications. That's what you're doing. And how did you end up in Columbus, Ohio?
Well, after I finished up my degree and then my work at a research institute at University of South Carolina, I was affiliated, or I was doing some work with the Charles Kettering Foundation, which is based in Ohio. And for those of you that don't know who Charles Kettering is, every time you start your car, he's the one that invented the electric starter, so you don't have to hand crank up your car.
Yeah.
So he was, a famous inventor and did a lot in the automotive industry and other things like that. So that essentially functions as a think tank, and it moved into what we call, I guess a democracy think tank, and how to get people involved in a productive and civil way in politics and issues and things like that. So I was working with them and doing some work with them, and had some research contracts I affiliated with them, and just out of the blue, they offered me a job. So they kind of made me an offer that I couldn't refuse in a way. And I left, went to Ohio. I mean, I was kind of, to a degree, taking the Underground Railroad back to New England, where I was from. And I worked at the think tank for about 6.5 years or so. Met my lovely wife, Liliana, who's a native of Costa Rica.
Nice.
There. We got married, and then Lily wanted to start her own business. She had formed some other business or whatever, but she formed this, what is now cross-cultural communications, which does business interpretation, translation, diversity training. And with me, I've added some public affairs, expertise and consulting. And so we moved that. We were living in Dayton, Ohio at the time. And we decided that because of our clientele or whatever, we needed to be more centrally located, because otherwise you have to drive, a lot to, various.
Sure.
We don't do this anymore now because we're all,
yeah,
we're all on Zoom. Back before the pandemic, when you used to have to deliver trainings and things like that, we moved more central located to Columbus. And Lily at the time was pursuing an MBA program full time. So I came on board temporarily to just to run the business or whatever until she finished her schooling. And with the idea that I would, once she finished her school, I would, go off and do something else, and she would take back over the helm. But as most plans go, right after she finished her MBA degree, she got hired by the state of Ohio, and she's now currently the executive director of the Ohio Latino Affairs Commission. So because she has a government position or whatever, I had to, I had to keep running the country, and she has to kind of, for ethics reasons, keep an arm's length distance from it. So that's that's kind of my story, and
that's great.
That's what we're doing, now. While in fact, she's upstairs now because they're on home.
Oh,
running,
yeah.
Yeah. Running her Latino Affairs Commission from the upstairs bedroom.
From Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, that's great. John, that was fantastic. I really appreciate it.